On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
In this episode of Life Science Success, I just wanted to say that we're getting ready to kick off an interview with Broderick Jones. And before we hop into the interview, I wanted to quickly play a message from our sponsor.
Are you a life science investor or executive looking to make meaningful connections? Introducing Bullpen, an exclusive club where industry leaders gather to help others succeed. Our mantra is simple: find someone to help. Repeat. Join us for virtual panels, networking events, and unparalleled opportunities to collaborate with top-tier professionals. Bullpen, where deal makers meet and innovation thrives. Apply now at bullpen.ventures.
In this episode of Life Science Success, I'm interviewing Broderick Jones with over 25 years of experience in healthcare and life sciences. Broderick now leads at Verista, driving innovation in compliance and validation services for pharmaceutical and biotech industries. With that, welcome, Broderick.
Hey, Don. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, it's great to have you as well. And I look forward to diving into this because I feel like there are a lot of people that I've talked to, in a variety of spaces. And, having somebody as well that has a background in compliance and validation, to me, just really, will help, I think, sort of frame up things for different people that are out there with a lot of questions around how they engage somebody with your experience. So thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey to life science industry?
Yeah, sure. My journey with the life sciences industry really started at my career at Arthur Andersen. So way back when Arthur Andersen had Andersen Consulting, which then ultimately became Accenture. And they aligned you when you came on board. I was based in Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia region is a huge, industry region for life sciences. And so I began working with life sciences there, and my first client being AstraZeneca, which was great. And I just continued that trend throughout my career. So moving on to EPAM Systems, where I led our life sciences and healthcare practice there. Capgemini, where I led the life sciences practice globally for our consulting business. And now Verista, which is a more niche, more focused company. And I'm doing some things outside of that as well. So that's how I sort of got on that pathway. It was sort of selected for me in many ways, but once I started, it became very near and dear to my heart, because unlike some of the other industries that you can work in, at the end of the day, we're helping, people live longer, healthier lives. And that means something to me. So it's been a passion of mine since I've gotten into the industry.
I feel like there's just this really sort of broad market overall inside of life science as well, right? So you got, everything,
yes,
healthcare to pharmaceuticals, medical device, et cetera. And it just, there's a lot of different verticals inside of this space. And, by being selected like that, one good thing is you probably had, quite a few people that you could, learn from along the way. But at the same time, there's just a lot to pick up as well.
Yes. Accenture itself as a starting point was a great starting point and foundation. To your point, the level of expertise and the wide range of skills that's in that organization is tremendous. And so, you begin with, one of the verticals or subsegments, like you said, and you get comfortable and you learn maybe about the pharma business. And then, a project or a client comes up and it's animal health, or it's consumer health, or it's med tech, like you said. And while many of the things are transferable, there's different nuances to those things, and you begin to sort of hone in and tap into those things. And it's some of those things are more interesting or more novel than you might think. Like, when you're working with animal health or different areas, you're like, okay, well, we can only do certain things at night because that's when mice are active. And so those kinds of nuances. And then when you do things in the consumer health space, it's much more similar to a CPG, and you find yourself, dealing not with prescriptions, but SKU numbers. And so it becomes a much more intricate line of business that you're working in. And so, being able to move and flow and adapt into that has been what keeps things interesting. And that doesn't touch healthcare at all, right? With the payers, the provider space. And so, even in those areas, it becomes a whole different set of stakeholders, a whole different set of objectives. And so being in this space has afforded me the opportunity to really see and spend time in a number of diverse areas and not get bored at all.
Yeah, I'll bet. And then how did your experience across healthcare, life science, and financial services shape your current role?
Yeah, so I think, when you look at some of the focus that I've had over the years, the financial services background, which was really just a small portion early in my career, taught me two things. One was how to deal with people face to face and on an intimate level. I did personal financial planning. And so, really, how do you help an individual listen to their problems, listen to them well, and then help them craft solutions that are going to be valuable for them as individuals. And while, at large corporations, you have a set of offerings and a set of things that you bring to bear. At the end of the day, you're in the room with an individual. And so that was very helpful. The other thing that was helpful from a financial services perspective was really just understanding how to manage my own career and financial well-being. I think a lot of people that come into the consulting business, don't have some of that foundation. And so that's been very helpful for me personally. The rest of the journey for life sciences and healthcare, I think, coming into being able to have a focus and intent of helping others and driving that forward. Having a reason to wake up in the morning because what you're going to do makes a difference. When I spent some time working with EPAM systems, we supported clients like McKesson during the pandemic, right? So knowing the work you were doing was going to make sure the vaccines got into people's houses or treatments for them, makes a difference. And so that's really what's helped shape my career, my incentive, and my motivation for what I do.
So I certainly have run into quite a few consulting companies in our space, right? EPAM and Capgemini for sure. I just was curious. I didn't know really a lot about Verista. I've done a fair amount of research, just leading into the interview here. Could you just explain a little bit about what led you to Verista and what is your current position there?
Yeah, Verista is a leader in regulatory compliance and quality. And so it's a very niched organization, and their focus is, in that space within the life sciences area. They touch on a couple of other areas as well, but that's the primary focus, more than 95% of their business. And so what attracted me to working with them was a couple of things related to my own career journey. One was, as you mentioned, some of the organizations that I've worked with in the past are large corporations, public companies. Verista was a smaller organization. It wasn't public. It's private equity owned. And I wanted to get some experience working with some smaller organizations from a PE perspective as well, which that Verista afforded me the opportunity to do that. The second thing was, if you look at my personal experience, I have a good bit of experience related to the commercial side of the business in life sciences. So everything from marketing, sales, med affairs, et cetera, as well as the R&D side, whether it be, drug development, clinical. Where I had a little less experience was on the manufacturing side. So I've done some things related to supply chain and manufacturing, but Verista offered me the opportunity from a compliance and regulatory perspective to actually be on the shop floor, right? To sort of be and see the manufacturing lines and get closer to that in a way that I hadn't had the opportunity before. So for those two reasons, primarily, it really sparked my attention and brought me to the organization. I think part of what they do is, computer software, quality validation, things like that. I've had a good amount of experience there. And then some of it is more, large scale operational compliance and quality. So that again relates more to the manufacturing, the actual facilities. And so that's the piece that was the most attractive to me. Right now I'm supporting in more of a point role for the organization related to marketing and sales and driving, helping support that area for them.
Great. And so these are going to be some pointed questions to try and sort of help people sort in terms of where Verista might be able to help as well. And feel free to, fill in as much as possible. So if I buy a piece of equipment that has software that needs to be validated inside of a GXP environment, is that someplace that Verista currently helps clients?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, a big piece of their business is computer software validation. And so if you're going to have a piece of equipment or a piece of software that needs to be certified and GXP ready or Part 11 compliant, Verista can absolutely help you do that. And so, that the expertise that they bring in that area is top notch. And that's a focus of the organization. Normally, any piece of software that's going to touch drug product in the life cycle would need to be compliant and certified in that way. And those are the kinds of pieces of software that the company focuses on making sure are in place and are in good standing.
Okay. Dollar range or people range that normally, are your ideal clients?
The more the merrier, right? No, I think for Verista, that's a pretty wide range. If you're talking about supporting some clients, you're looking at some of the top 10 pharma, so the Mercks, the Eli Lillys of the world. Also, we would service, or Verista would service biotech organizations as well, so the smaller side of that, as well as CDMOs and CMOs, which are contract manufacturing and drug operations, places like Catalent and Lonza. So those are all clients that would fall into the size and shape of what we would support at Verista. Okay.
I have some weird questions here. So, some people know my background leads back to pharmaceutical manufacturing as well. So
oh, no.
Let's say that So let's say that I bought, the next, sort of, large scale manufacturing column and things like that I need to get process validated inside of my environment. Is that something that you guys do, or is that a boundary that?
No, but Verista does do that as well. So if you look at, and that was part of what my interest was in learning more about, right? So when you're talking about now manufacturing equipment or manufacturing facilities, you're really talking about commissioning, qualifying, and validation, which is a slightly different, but it's still the same idea of, hey, there's a set of standards that need to be met from a regulatory perspective and from a safety perspective, and we would go through and confirm that those things are appropriate. That includes writing the protocol for them. That includes doing the inspection, et cetera. And so we do draw a line, or Verista does draw a line on regulatory validation versus safety. Like if you think about like OSHA guidelines or things like that, that's a little different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really helpful, because I just think about this space in our environment. We were talking about sort of the broad level of things you might get involved in. And then you start talking about, validation in our space can have a lot of different
absolutely
as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So how does Verista's approach to compliance and validation services differ from others in the industry?
One of the differences for Verista versus some of the other players in the industry is really the breadth and collection of services. So if you look at some of the competitors that you have in the marketplace, Many of them will focus on one or two areas. So, for example, we just talked about the equipment validation or the site validation. They may focus and specialize there. Others may focus on computer system validation as a focal point. You get a lot of larger organizations that do that kind of work. But being able to do all of those kinds of components together is one of the differentiators of the organization. One of the others is their national footprint and ability to operate at scale, both onshore and offshore, and bringing some of that deep expertise. Many of the folks that lead the business there have several decades of experience in these areas, and so that level of quality expertise comes to the surface as well in terms of what differentiates the organization.
Very good. Can you share an example of a challenging project that you've worked on at Verista and how you overcame the obstacle?
Yeah, sure. One of my experiences at Verista, we looked at a client and they were really building a new facility. So they had an existing facility. They were building a new facility. And when you're building those kinds of facilities and the construction work and things that go into that, you can imagine the amount of things that could possibly go wrong. And so, they were getting behind on some of the design of the facility, which then delays construction, which then, crunches budgets, et cetera. And so as they looked at that, one of the challenges they had, as I talked to the executive team and the executive leader there, was, hey, if you're going to develop this new facility and now you're running into challenges and gaps in terms of what you can do, how quickly you can do it, are you starting to trade off things like, okay, well, to keep the schedule or to keep the budget, we're not going to have this portion, or we're going to delay doing that. And so we talked to him about was, what if we can work with you within your existing facility? Because one of the services that Verista offers are things around IT services, as well related to the compliance and cybersecurity area, other areas. What if we could service you, lower your cost to operate in your existing facility to free up cash so you can reinvest it in the new facility, right? And so it created an opportunity for us to potentially work together to solve two problems with one organization. You talked about what differentiates Verista. That's one of the things that we can do and think about.
Yeah, it's so important to sort of consider, what the project scope trade-offs could be, yeah. Right? If they're truly limiting scope due to time, and that's a constraint, and yet they can leverage another resource to possibly
Absolutely.
help, include that scope. It's a great way to leverage, I feel like, additional capacity that's not internal. And I feel
Absolutely.
like that's where consultants play a role all the time.
Yeah, sure. I think there's really two things that consultants do, right? One, they either offer a capability, right? Something that they know how to do that the organization doesn't know how to do or needs help standing up or implementing. The second one, and I don't think it should be downplayed, is capacity, to your point, right? Like the organization may know how to do it. They may be capable, they may have the capabilities, and sometimes you just need a little more help, right? A little more person power to achieve what you're trying to do in the time frame you're trying to do it. And so, I think that's a valuable thing for consultants to provide. We do that across all of the organizations I've worked for. We never shy away from that work. So yeah, absolutely. It's either capacity or capability that often consultants are providing to our clients.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up a dirty word in my book. So this word digital transformation. So what role does digital transformation play in Verista's services, and how do you see it evolving? I guess also, how do you see it maybe used well, and how do you see it abused? Because I mean, the reason why I say it's a dirty word is that I see a lot of people, whenever they don't know what to say, they say, well, we're going to undergo a digital transformation. We were told by a consultant that this is something that we need to do. And then you sort of look at the beginning point and the end point, and then you're like, did they really wind up in a better place? So
Yeah.
that's the reason why I say what I say about it. So
No, I agree. I think, digital transformation is something, to your point, that's overused and a bit of a buzzword at times. Digital itself, right, is a word, and transformation, right? Both of those words are buzzwords that consultants use an awful lot, and you put them together, right? So I think if you look at the quality commissioning and validation and other regulatory and standard task and business, I think what needs to happen and evolve is how that work is actually performed and done. So if you look at a lot of it, particularly on the commissioning, qualification, and validation side, it is largely manual, right? And so when you look at the work that needs to be done and you talk about digital transformation, there's a real opportunity to take a huge amount of manual tasks and make them digital. And there's two approaches to that. One is, digitizing a process. And the other is, actually, making it more digitally native, right? And I think that's where we have the most opportunity related to digital transformation. So, I was working with a colleague of mine, and we looked at the work that's required from a commissioning quality validation perspective, leveraging some digital tools. And I'll use another dirty word for you, right? Leveraging some AI as well, right? You're able to drive a significant portion of manual effort out of that process, right? For protocol generation and a few other things. And you still need people, and you still need, other sort of processes that aren't, able to be digital immediately, but thinking about and putting a stake in the ground to move those things forward. I personally think that's how you drive the change. And I personally think we're a little bit behind in that space, frankly. Not just my organization, but folks that are servicing from a regulatory compliance and validation perspective. And there's reasons for that, right? Part of the risk is, we believe that Tom or Jane, has 25 years, 20 years experience of doing X, Y, Z in the regulatory space. But we don't know that this AI solution or this other digital process is as well tested or as proven or as unfallible, right? And so some of those things, I think, create uncertainty and angst when you're trying to drive digital transformation, particularly in this space, particularly in the regulatory space. The other challenge I think we're seeing is, how do you ensure that it's explainable, right? If it's digital is great, it creates, official audit trails and different things like that. But if you're venturing into some of the newer technology for AI in other areas, it becomes, how do I validate, what's been said or why a decision was made? And so I think for valid reasons, we're a little bit behind in that space. But I think we're overly resistant as an industry, particularly in the compliance regulatory validation space.
Yeah, I also, to give, credit where credit is due as well. I feel like, once a system or process is embedded in something that's validated, a lot of people just don't want to go back and touch it again. Because it's like, I remember, it took us, a long time to do this initially and a fair amount of money. And there's typically those sort of concerns that come along with this sort of space and conversation as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's an investment there, but I think the other piece of it is, there's a systematic review for many of those systems, tools, technology, software, in the cycle of every 2 years for many of those things, if not more frequent. And so, I think having the right planning for a collection of solutions or collection of equipment, and not all of it, right? But sort of moving through that in those 2-year cycles can allow for more incremental investment. And over time, then all of those things become refreshed and then in the new digital approach or digital format. There's other things, though, I think that, frankly, to your point, right, it's to take all the paper and then get it into the digital validation system. Maybe you do leave it and then you just start the new ones, right? So there's ways of getting around it. But I think, again, to your point, Don, right, there's just a general reluctancy and a perspective that, gosh, this is going to be painful. And I think that is holding us back a little bit in this space for driving greater digital transformation.
Yeah, I think I think there's an opportunity here for sure. I mean, I think to your point, right? So to me, new digital technology and things that remove paper, things that kind of constrain errors from happening, right? So all of those things are huge benefits to everybody. And at the end of the day, wouldn't you like something that makes, one, the work easy, and two, make it easy to detect when errors are going to happen? Three, I mean, with AI and some of the new technologies as well, some of the things that I've heard in previous podcasts is that, hey, look, some of the technology that's coming makes being audited a little easier too, because, you could kind of, say, hey, look, I need everything related to this particular process, inside of the company, and give me, all of the documentation and essentially all the performance within this time period. You could have it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're using a generative AI or machine learning solution there, you can absolutely do that. But even if that seems like a bridge too far, there's organizations out there, places that Verista partners with, like Blue Mountain, for example, that, has an inventory of all of the equipment in the facility. Last time it was inspected, what was it done? And so, to your point, when the auditors come, it's there, right? It's pulled up, right? You can look it up, you can pull it, you can print it out, you can do what you need to do. It's not, hey, let me go. Hey, Dodd, did you look at machine 254 last time? Can you pull that up off your laptop, or can you find that on the shared drive somewhere, or the SharePoint site? No, it's there, right? And that's those kinds of software tools, don't require this, the leap of faith, if you will, for those who are still trying to get to AI or generative AI solutions.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also open it up to any other innovative solutions or services that Verista currently is developing as well. I mean, are there any other things that you'd like to talk about in that same vein?
No, I think generally, if you look at the focus of generative AI, I think that's a space where we're going to continue to see greater evolution. Again, I think if you look at what needs to be done when you're doing audits, when you're doing quality assurance inspections, right? You can begin to generate that information via AI in much more efficient and timely way. And so I think that's really the next frontier for what companies like Verista and what they do in their business to sort of continue to explore and move forward.
Nice. How did your experience across all the different areas that you've worked in, from commercial, R&D, supply chain, and enterprise services, inform your leadership style?
It makes me more sensitive to the needs of both my clients and the teams that I'm working with, because the mentalities are very different. The people, their qualifications, their background are very different. And so what you begin to do is appreciate the diversity in that and become much more sensitive when you're talking to and working with different people in different areas. So if I'm working with some of my R&D colleagues, right, all of these people are certifiably more intelligent than me, right? They have advanced degrees, have the things. And so when you're a consultant coming in, there needs to be a different level of how you're going to speak to them, how you're going to work with them. And there needs to be an appreciation for what they do and their motivations, right? At the end of the day, they're very interested in making sure that they're developing a science that will, come to fruition to help patients and doctors, advance health, right? When you're on the commercial side, again, very talented people that have a different set of skills and often are more motivated to make sure that, a patient or doctor experience is the best it can be, and that they're going to be able to drive the revenue and the profitability of the organization. On the supply chain side or the enterprise side, it's, hey, will this run smoothly? Is it going to be predictable? Or is it going to work? Right. And there's a very pragmatic, very pragmatic near to midterm focus for those folks, where you can't come in like you might with a commercial team and be all vision and pie in the sky. Right. It's like, nope, give me the tactical. How is this going to work? How is it going to be more efficient? What's the metrics, right? And being able to switch between those audiences, I've found has been something I'm able to do, and being able to having the experience of working in those areas have helped me do that. And then when you're with an individual, you can also then be sensitive, regardless of what area they're coming from, to then understand their needs personally. And so that's what I think some of that variation has helped me do.
Yeah, I think I was just telling somebody earlier today that one of the terms that I've learned throughout time is that we all have different personalities, and we all deal with the way that we look at change, or the way that we look at something being improved or whatever is a bit different. And there's normally 3 categories that we fit into, and one of them is like, you might need the data around that change and why it's going to happen. You also might need somebody to say, these are the specific steps. That's the demonstrate part of it. And the last one is, sometimes you just need to be told, hey, look, if you don't do this, which kind of goes back, I would imagine, a lot to your area. Hey, look, if you don't do this, it's a fairly large risk for you to take on. It's yours to take. Yeah. But again, you have to make the choice. Do you want the risk there, or would you rather, us work on mitigating this and hopefully not dealing with it some other way?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I say, look, I'm here to consult, not to be right. Meaning, you can be right. We don't have to argue over, well, you don't like what I'm suggesting, or you don't like what you've seen, or you disagree with this data. You can be right. I don't need to be right. I'm just, to your point, here to advise you that from where I sit, from what I've seen, from the analysis that we've done, or whatever the supporting evidence is, here's a perspective based on what I understand of your business and what I understand about your competitors in the broad industry.
Yeah. It's so important too to get. I mean, it's one of the benefits that I also see, as well, just being able to advise people. One, you have experience, and 2, you're just being able to share that is a tremendous value to organizations, allowing them to accelerate. They're learning through, lots of experiences that you have. What do you see is the biggest challenge in life sciences, and how is Verista addressing, some of those big challenges?
Yeah, let me just say, to your point around advisement, we're learning too, right? I think that's one of the mistakes I think that the consulting industry overall makes, and then certainly individuals, is feeling like, hey, we have the experience and we have the answer for you. I think it's naive and foolish for me, right, to go speak to an executive who has, worked 30 years in the life sciences space, 20 years at their particular organization, right, and say, I know better than you, right? I think there's a level of collaboration of ideas and a level of respect of a client and their experience that help us get to a better place. And I do think that's a mistake that, consulting organizations sometimes make. Just related to your other question in terms of, where
challenges
the challenges are. Yeah, where the challenges are. I think that, Verista is a pretty focused organization. And so candidly, when I think about some of the largest challenges within the life sciences industry, they're not positioned to address all of them at scale. But one of the largest challenges I think the life sciences industry faces right now is R&D productivity. And so if you look at historically the amount of drug development and products that come out into the marketplace and what they serve and how they serve, right? That's been in pretty consistent decline over the last several years. And so I think that's the largest challenge that the industry faces, right? That's the core of their business is coming up with products that help people live healthier, longer lives that then they can, appropriately make money off, right? Because they're not nonprofits, right? They're in business to make money. From a Verista perspective, I think Verista can help service in that area in a number of ways. One is, they can support accelerating the regulatory process in that. So they've had the opportunity to support product launch and development, in that cusp area. They're not further back on the core drug development or clinical side, but as you get to the end of clinical and go into regulatory and commercialization, there are spaces there that the organization can help with and help accelerate. I think one of the other challenges that the industry faces overall are things related to, technology, value extracting the value that you can get from your technology. And when I say technology, I'm talking about that in the broadest terms, whether it's, the pieces of equipment that are driving the manufacturing process or the software that's enabling different components of that. And again, I think that's another area where the organization has struggled and an area where an organization like Verista can certainly help as well. There's some other ones that, I think Verista and companies like them are not well suited for. There's certainly things related to overall pricing pressure. There's some other sort of things related to supply chain, things like that. So areas that I think are very relevant and important to the life sciences industry to think about, less, affectable by organizations like Verista.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I think about supply chain, I oftentimes think about, sort of globalization and localization.
Yes.
So everybody was pushing, kind of their supply chain out to lower cost manufacturing, trying to lower drug cost. And then COVID happened. And everybody said, wait a minute, we can't do this on such a large scale. We got to pull back a little bit. And
right.
It's this whole localization effort. What I hear you say is that that's not a part of the focus, but at the same time, if there are maybe technology solutions where you're trying to get the most out of, how do you best leverage the technology that you have to get the results that you want in those efforts? Maybe something that you guys play in. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, no, there's a portion of the business that's focused on IT and IT solutions. But again, typically it'll come back to, is there a regulatory compliance or quality implication to it? And if not, it begins to sit outside of the scope of focus typically.
Yeah. So how does Verista approach talent development and fostering innovation within the company?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm very happy about and proud of, frankly, is part of when I joined the organization, I'd spent some time focused on helping do and develop and make sure that we had some different ways of doing training and development. There's a number of investments even before my being a part of the organization that the company has. One is, things like tuition reimbursement, things like paying for certifications, et cetera. And so it's a key focus of the organization to help drive individual development and improvement.
Very good. What's the greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever received?
I'm laughing because of my father came to mind. I'm sure you're thinking more professional leadership advice, but it's be home for your family. That's the greatest piece of leadership advice, because of if it doesn't go well there, it won't go well else anywhere. No, I think that's one of the greatest things on a more professional side. Less about a particular point of advice and more about shaping clear definitions of leadership and being told to, have that clarity of your authentic leadership style. Right. And I think when I look at a lot of junior executives or new managers or things like that, you see them struggle quite a bit with, the kind of leader that they want to be. And so some of the best advice I've had was, not a particular thing, but, hey, make sure you have a very clear definition of leadership and what your authentic leadership style is. And if I was to ask you, Don, right, or somebody else, if I was to ask you just, hey, can you define leadership? Most people would struggle with that definition off the cuff, right? For me, leadership is the art of influencing and directing people in a way that wins their confidence, obedience, and respect in achieving a common objective, right? It's clear, like that's the definition. And each piece of that then requires you to do something different with the people that you're leading and working with. And when you have that clarity, you know what you need to do. And then when you have a sense of what your unique style is, then not just what to do, but how you go about doing it.
It's so important. I love all those points. So thank you for sharing that, Broderick. Thanks a lot. What inspires you?
Being able to help clients solve problems that lead to people living healthier, longer lives, right? Because at the end of the day, like earlier in my career, I worked in financial services, and part of what I did was, financial planning and things like that. And that made a difference, right? Helping, people plan for the future. I know you have kids who are on their own now, right? And, how do you make sure there's money for college, or how do you, do these other things? How do you make sure there's insurance in place in case something happens? But what you learn is health is wealth. Mm-hmm. And that excites me and inspires me to be able to go and know that the work I'm doing or the problem that I'm trying to solve with a client, at the end of the day, is part of the ecosystem that'll help a patient hopefully have a better experience in life.
Yeah. So, so very important to work around so many people that are touching lives in that way, and getting to be a part of it is an inspirational piece of life for sure.
The privilege.
What concerns you?
I'm concerned about where we go next, right? It's if you look at the healthcare industry, if you look at the life sciences industry, I think there continues to be a lot of uncertainty there. People, in many ways, things are very positive, right? People are living longer, but how do you deal with older populations? How do we care for them? I think if you look at our society here in the United States, I've had global roles and have seen other markets, right? I don't think we value the same way many other countries value aging populations, right? And so what does that mean for them as we render healthcare, as we focus on disease areas? So that concerns me. Another area that concerns me is where we're going to go and what we're going to do related to women's health and other minority groups as well. If you look at, it's amazing, right? If you think about things like diversity in clinical trials, right? I have 2 daughters and a wife, right? So clearly I'm a little biased, right? But, how is it that, 70% or so of clinical trials have only been done in men in this day and age, right? Like, and how is it that medical textbooks, how we treat patients, it's so challenging for an African American woman to be serviced in our healthcare system the same way a European male would be. Everything from the kinds of medication, the kinds of focus on the drug development side, on the healthcare side, even the marketing side. Right. One of the interesting things, if you look out there now, consumerization is big in the space, and you have, hims and hers as sort of delivery mechanisms for products and drugs. If you look at the marketing for those two, right? Hims marketing, fine. If you look at hers, when they launched that, the marketing campaign was about women being crazy and depressed. Like, that was the focus of the marketing push that they had. And it's interesting. They've changed that now. They made some adjustments. I'm not blaming them or anything like that, but I think it's indicative of how we look at women in the health system, and certainly minorities as well. So those are two of the things that I think concern me really about what we can do and what we need to impact in the health, care, and life sciences industry.
Yeah, I feel like in general, helping people find clinical trials is something that could just be done. And I did an interview. This is quite a while ago, but there's a European company that has an app that essentially you download that app and it'll say, hey, look, in these areas that could be care areas for you, there are these clinical trials that are going on. And obviously you still have to apply and be accepted and all that kind of stuff. But the whole idea behind this concept was, how do we not have like the white male population be the primary target of of clinical trials that are going on, and expose more people to at least, hey, if you have a problem, there could be a way that you get a treatment early, and it's through being a part of this research process, right? Which kind of benefits everybody. So
yeah, and that diversity too is extends across rural versus metropolitan areas, right? We have if you look at the United States, it's even Pennsylvania, where I'm from, right? Pennsylvania is in the top 5 or so rural states in the United States, right? And so getting to service rural populations as well for clinical trials and things is another area, regardless of gender or ethnicity, right? Just being in a rural area makes it more challenging for you to get the healthcare clinical trials and other things that you may need.
That's why I love the whole concept of diversified clinical trials and the whole idea of not sending every single patient to a major healthcare center to go get their data collected.
Yes. Decentralized clinical trials and diversified clinical trials are things that are moving in the industry, and I'm very happy to see, and things that I've actually supported and helped with at a few different organizations. And so yeah, it's great to see it. But having the emphasis there, I think or not having the emphasis there rather, I think is one of the things that I get concerned about at times.
Absolutely. Last question: what excites you?
My wife.
Good answer.
No, I think, what we have the ability to do now related to technology, it's not just certainly AI and generative AI and machine learning, and those things are there, but, we're in such an interesting time right now, where, before, when I first joined, Arthur Andersen, you implemented these large systems, and you had to try to make the business process fit to this new solution, because it could only do certain things in certain ways. We're living in an age of technology now, where for the first time, you can tailor the technology to do what the business wants it to do, or to do it in a way that doesn't require such a massive change in terms of, redefining the business process. And when you put in a piece of technology or something that is disruptive, it is just that, right? Disruptive, and there needs to be change and adoption managed. But what technology can do now is phenomenal. We talked about the problem of R&D productivity, right? Being able to apply AI, machine learning, those kinds of solutions to that, to develop new molecules to accelerate that process, tremendously valuable, right? Being able to augment medical device and medical technology needs for extremely challenging conditions like mobility, like lack of speech or deafness, right? And being able to do, right, those kinds of things where I can put on a set of, smart glasses now as a person who can't hear. It'll read the lips of somebody and then spell out what they're saying. It's game changing, right? And so what we have in the way of technology and how we can, if we focus on applying it the right way, really address some serious challenges in our treatments and our healthcare system are phenomenal. And I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Broderick Jones. Thank you for being on the Life Science Success podcast. I greatly appreciate you being here. And it was great getting to hear about, Verista, everything that you're doing. Definitely if people have needs in the space of regulatory, they definitely should reach out and connect with you. Where's the best place to connect with you? And then also where's the best place to, sort of find out more about Verista?
Yeah, the best place to connect is Verista.com, and that'll be the best way for you to get in contact. And I certainly and the Verista team can follow up accordingly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on again, and I greatly appreciated you being here with me and sharing the story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Don. You have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.